In April of 2020, amidst what was considered the beginning of the pandemic, Travis Scott held one of the biggest virtual concerts ever done so far. With over 12.3 million concurrent players attending the concert, a number that ignores the other millions of people viewing it from the perspectives of their favorite content creators and streamers, this concert, this virtual gathering, alongside Zoom calls and the sudden resurgence of virtual reality, became catalysts for the announcement of
the Metaverse.
The Metaverse.
The Metaverse.
The Metaverse.
Of the Metaverse.
The Metaverse.
The Metaverse.
the Metaverse. A buzzword thrown around, beaten and battered by the news and social media alike. For those who know of it, I understand when compared to topics of racism or mental health, the concept of the metaverse definitely appears to be a goofy one. However, there is reason to believe that the idea of the metaverse can help reflect upon current issues in society, and can create a significant dialogue for what changes need to happen. But before we could talk about that, I must explain. What is the metaverse? To answer this question, let's look what Meta, the company at the forefront of the metaverse, perceives it to be.
Hey, and welcome to Connect. Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse. The basic story of technology in our lifetimes is how it's given us the power to express ourselves and experience the world with ever greater richness. Back when I started Facebook, that mostly meant text that we typed on computers. Then we all got phones with cameras, and the internet became much more visual. And recently, as connections got faster, video has become the main way that we experience content. We've gone from desktop to web to phones, from text to photos to video, but this isn't the end of the line. The next platform and medium will be even more immersive, an embodied internet where you're in the experience, not just looking at it. And we call this the metaverse. And you're gonna be able to do almost anything you can imagine. Get together with friends and family, work, learn, play, shop, create, as well as entirely new categories that don't really fit how we think about computers or phones today. We believe the metaverse will be the successor to the mobile internet. We'll be able to feel present, like we're right there with people, no matter how far apart we actually are. We'll be able to express ourselves in new, joyful, completely immersive ways, and that's going to unlock a lot of amazing new experiences.
Meta believes that the metaverse is the next step for the internet, expression, and the human experience, promising a virtual world where anything is possible. So why? Why is a trillion-dollar company vying for such a seemingly distant technology? Well, surprisingly, corporate jargon aside, the metaverse exists today. The term metaverse actually has existed since the 90s, being first coined by American writer Neil Stephenson in his 1992 book called Snow Crash. It basically was a digital reality where people would escape to when things in the real world became too much or too boring. However, with time and meta, the definition of the metaverse has changed. The metaverse is defined as a persistent virtual environment that allows access to and interoperability of multiple individual reality. Whatever that means. If that didn't make sense, it can also be interpreted as an accessible digital world consisting of a series of other digital worlds. Anyways, back on topic. To answer the question why Meta, formerly known as Facebook, has drastically changed their business model, let's look at the current state of social media.
Well, right now, social media is upside down in their normal business model. Just this month, we've seen advertising revenues go down for all these big companies. Facebook, Google, and Twitter all went down in their revenues that they get from advertising, which is their business model. So as much as we want to not think about that, that's definitely going to have an impact. So if we talk about, and that's the first time they've ever declined. It's the first time in Facebook's history that they've actually had revenue decline from advertising. So that could just be an economy thing, or it could be a paradigm shift in that industry.
If we put economics aside and take into account the possible paradigm shift, it appears that the current business model of big tech and social media is failing. Considering this factor of a failing business model, Meta is trying to find new ways of revenue. And since the relative success that was virtual meetings, learning, and interaction during the pandemic of COVID-19, Meta is now vying for a future, the future of virtual reality. To further my research, I decided to figure out what was so great about virtual reality. So I decided to dive into the metaverse. However, the current virtual platform offered by Meta Horizons, was a not so ideal space to explore, and was littered with undevout users of the metaverse, and critics wishing to find something wrong with it. So I picked the next best thing, a game described as the closest thing to the metaverse, a virtual reality game called VR Chat. VR Chat is a social VR game that allows players to interact with each other in virtual reality. In the game, players can create their own avatars, worlds, and custom game modes, and also can explore and socialize in a variety of pre-existing worlds. Quick disclaimer, VRChat also offers a desktop version of the game, and since I currently lack the necessary funds to purchase a VR headset, I decided to go with that option. And so I dived in, donned an avatar of my choosing, and asked those who populated the metaverse, why do you play this game?
For most people, it's just like they get bored and they want to talk to people. I mean, that's the reason for me. I just get bored. A lot of people on here are like really interesting, and sometimes they're up, and I just like watching the chaos ensue. We're just lonely like that guy.
For me, it's mainly just boredom because it's either I play this or Stardew Valley.
Same.
I just like meeting kids like this and like
I started this about a week ago.
Oh
Mainly
boy.
because I'm an absolute hermit. I don't leave my house except just for getting groceries or going to work. So I figured, well, I've been denying myself of social interactions like badly for so long, so might as well jump into something.
Today's metaverse has become an outlet for people to talk to others and experience social interaction, essentially becoming an extension of social media where people are able to feel physically there. Virtual reality has the potential to enable those with social anxiety or low self-esteem to maintain a level of social interaction that is easier for them to experience.
For me personally, because I have no in-person friends because I'm homeschooled. The only friend I have in person is my boyfriend that lives with me. I've been homeschooled since 3rd grade. It gives me a way to socialize and make friends and be able to experience being around people without actually having to be around people, because I do have social anxiety and I do get self-conscious.
it's because I have small
Thing.
and this is the only way I can talk to people.
It's either
I just sort of got into it because I saw that like you could be anything, and I never liked my appearance. So the initial reason that I got into VR was so that I could like sort of like look at myself and be like, wow, it's so beautiful, But I never had very high self-esteem, and like VR chat really helped me like actually find a little bit more confidence in myself.
VR grants users a level of anonymity, which allows them to freely express themselves in the way they want, far from their concerns of their appearance or social standing. However, with that said, this level of anonymity can be a cause for concern.
People have this detachment when they're in that altered reality or in the video game setting, right? And I think people might be concerned, if you're in the metaverse, would people really truly act like they were? And maybe that's not necessarily the best way to phrase it. Maybe people could get outside of their comfort zone or truly be themselves there, but would also other people take advantage of that being anonymous in that environment, if that makes sense.
The idea of someone taking advantage of anonymity, specifically in terms of cyberbullying, is a prevalent concern both today and in discussions about the metaverse. Today, almost half of teens that use the internet experience some sort of form of cyberbullying, and when you apply this figure to the evolution of the metaverse, these kinds of experience could be increased drastically.
Listen, cállate, hocico, por favor, gracias. You are.
Oh my
sort
god.
of- That's it. That's it.
no
period.
fangule. No fangule altísimo.
Ay, que la todo tu pinche puta
Altísimo.
madre, pues cállate el hocico, por favor, tu pinche perrita. Cállate, por favor.
This leads to the core topic of this documentary. How the problems and concerns held for the metaverse heavily reflect upon the problems we see plague the internet today.
My worry is that people, and I'm no psychologist, my worry would be that people would use the metaverse to replace reality.
Yeah.
And we see, how much addiction do we see now to technology? When you completely put yourself in that world, I think it probably poses some risks.
Through time, social media has been refined to keep users on their platform. And according to statistics, it's working. 97% of teens have reportedly used the internet daily, whilst 46% of them are reported to use it constantly, every day, every single waking hour. This is a drastic increase compared to the data from 6 to 7 years ago. Now, with the idea of the metaverse, an addiction to something as close as real life, but seemingly better, is even more plausible, and calls for some sort of action. So why? Why is social media so addictive? It's mainly because of the use of algorithms and artificial intelligence.
Almost everything we're coming into contact with now has artificial intelligence behind it. Now, what does that have to do with what it looks like to the consumer? Suggestions of posts that are much more aligned to what you actually want to, what the user actually wants to see. You should start getting really good recommendations.
With the advent of artificial intelligence and smarter algorithms, users of the internet and most likely users of the metaverse would undergo a cycle of constant stimulation, never wanting to leave the grasp of technology. A bleak reality that is similar to ones shown in dystopia. So, how do we stop this? The answer lies within another problem of social media today: lack of regulation. Legislation regarding social media has been a slow and ineffective journey. Current laws regarding social media only pertain to children and younger users of the internet, which is something that is very difficult to enforce when you can simply just click a button and lie about your age. This lack of rules and regulations for social media has allowed tech companies like Meta and TikTok to hone their platforms into a psychologically addictive form of media, collecting user data and repurposing it to influence what one hears, sees, and buys.
We know that some of these firms have turned over information to the government when they've requested it, sometimes legitimately, and sometimes just because somebody in the government asked, which is a problem for privacy and security. When you start having artificial intelligence behind that, and the AI systems that government actors and state actors can possibly run on top of these, it causes a lot of red flags for privacy and security concerns and rights for the users.
The overarching issue is that, as a society, we are not ready for the metaverse. The concept of a true metaverse, the one preached by big tech today, will inevitably end in disaster if we don't fix the current problems of the internet. However, time moves too quickly, sometimes faster than we can adapt. Within under 50 years of technological advancement, we've had internet kids, iPad kids, and now VR kids. Children have now been enamored with the current technology of their present. So how do we combat these changing times? It's simply education. The know-how, the know-why, on choosing the correct decisions to make and the correct legislation to support.
We should not ignore any of the downsides. And what we have to do with anything where there's a significant downside, the only real thing that fixes that is education. And I'm not talking about traditional education. It's education about the harms, education about identifying like warning signs when you're getting addicted to it, or it's taking over your world. Warning signs, education that giving you warning signs about when maybe your account's been hacked or somebody's stalking you. Education beats those things. Think of it like, first of all, you can't shut it all out, right? You can't be the parents who are so worried their kids are going to be harmed by the world. They homeschool them, they keep them, not that there's anything wrong with homeschool, but they keep them here and don't expose them to society and the world, all right? They don't let them interface at all. And those children come out, most of them, and this is a broad statement, most of them come out and just go wild when they leave that environment because they've never had any exposure or education towards it. So the counter to that is good education. You can't beat it. That's what's going to get you through this. Knowing the dangers, knowing the risks, knowing the upsides. That's what counters all that. You don't ignore it. You got to hit it head on.